There are a lot of video game mascots, like a lot, many of which you have heard of and are unquestionably iconic. Mario, Sonic, and Astrobot are the first few that come to mind. Some, this may not look familiar. In today's video, we're going to talk about 8 video game mascots, including what made them the mascot for a piece of media, why they disappeared, or why they were straight up replaced. And we will start with the forgotten mascot of Sega, Alex Kidd. Part of Sega's appeal over Nintendo during the console wars of the 90s came when Sega realized that, in order to compete with Nintendo, they had to market themselves differently. They were cooler, edgier, sharper. Before that, they were just another system that was left flailing against the giant. Perhaps no decision was more important to Sega than the addition of Sonic as the mascot, rather than Alex Kidd. There were 7 Alex Kidd games, including 5 for the Master System, 1 for the Genesis, and a remaster of the first game, Alex Kidd in Miracle World, in 2021. Miracle World was built into versions of the Master System and Master System 2. As you can see, the games were colorful platformers featuring large, round graphics and a variety of environments. Honestly, it looks like a bad Mario ripoff, which is more or less what it was. While the graphics would improve over time, the basic concept of Alex Kidd didn't really change. It's also worth noting that the games did sell well and were positively reviewed. So here's the thing, Alex Kidd was, more or less, the mascot of the company. It was never an official decision, but as noted in the book Console Wars, Kidd was the closest thing that Sega had to an official mascot. In addition to the games, there was Alex Kidd merchandise, novelizations, and comics. The decision to develop a new mascot, which ultimately turned into Sonic, proved pivotal for the company, allowing them to compete with Nintendo in a way that went well beyond the creation of a mere Mario clone. The arrival of Sonic meant the end of Alex Kidd games. Kidd would hang on as a guest character, appearing in other franchises, including Sega Superstars Tennis, Sonic and Sega All-Star Racing, and Sonic and All-Stars Racing Transformed. Okay, so when you hear LucasArts, you probably think of the endless stream of Star Wars media. And you probably think that way because, you're normal.
There is another.
Sorry. Meet Chuck the Plant. So, Chuck the Plant hit mascot status in a most inauspicious way by appearing as an NPC in Maniac Mansion, a 1987 adventure mystery game that appeared on numerous computer and home console platforms. Chuck the Plant first looks like a regular old plant, but when you drag your cursor across it, it has a name. Chuck. All right. So, that was it for the plant in Maniac Mansion. No, seriously, that was it. No plot points, dialogue, hidden treasures. Just a plant. So, why is Chuck a mascot? He appeared in multiple LucasArts games. Chuck the Plant appeared in Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade, originally called LeChuck for some reason. Chuck also appeared in Indiana Jones and the Fate of Atlantis, although that scene was cut from the final game. He also appeared in Day of the Tentacle, which was the sequel to Maniac Mansion, and Tales of Monkey Island. Is calling Chuck the Plant a mascot of LucasArts a bit of a stretch? Yeah, maybe. But it was clearly an intentional decision. In interviews, developers for LucasArts said that Steve Arnold, a general manager for the company, developed a recurring joke in which he requested the inclusion of a character named Chuck. Unable to fit in a new character, developers Ron Gilbert and Gary Winnick renamed a plant Chuck, and from there, the joke took on a life of its own. In fact, Chuck became such a strange running joke that he appeared in multiple non-LucasArts games. For example, in the Elder Scrolls III Morrowind, Chuck appears as Charles the Plant, where he can be found at Jobasiah's Rare Books in Vivek. And that's just the start. In total, Chuck appears in around a dozen non-LucasArts games, including Alien Incident, Phoenix Wright Ace Attorney, Psychonauts, and many, many more. Some mascots disappear through no fault of their own. It was simply the case because their systems, didn't work. Such was the case for Sigato Saniro of the Sega Saturn. And this is absolutely one of the more unique entries on this list. Sigato Saniro was played by actor Hiroshi Fujioka. Sanshiro, a takeoff of Sugata Sanshiro of the 1943 movie Sanshiro Sugata, was designed as a martial arts expert. He first began appearing in television and radio ads in 1997, where his job was, you guessed it, to get people to buy the Sega Saturn. The commercials, which aired only in Japan, featured, violence against children, Sanshiro assaulting nightclub patrons, and Sanshiro impersonating Santa. Okay, honestly, these are hysterical, and I'm deeply disappointed that the commercials never made it to the United States. There are at least 22 commercials featuring Sanshiro. Helping to sell the parody was that Fujioka was actually a skilled martial artist who could really throw stunt doubles very, very far. The ads were a hit. They helped sell the system and even came with their own theme song, Sega Satan Shiro. In fact, the theme was so popular that it was released as a single in Japan. Fujioka would appear in character at promotional events and even had his own Saturn game released. In the final commercial featuring Sanshiro, Sanshiro saves Sega from a missile and is fired into space forever. He has since appeared in other games, including Sonic and All-Stars Racing Transformed and Project X Zone 2. In 2020, a Sega commercial featured Sanshiro's son, Segashiro. The actor who played Sanshiro's son, Maito Fujioka, the son of Hiroshi Fujioka. From the hilarious to the bonky, meet Bonk. Bonk was the mascot for the TurboGrafx 16 or PC Engine, the name of which depended on where you lived. The TurboGrafx 16 was a short-lived fourth-generation console designed to compete with the Super Nintendo and Sega Genesis. It was unique in that it made an early switch to CD-ROMs, making it at least somewhat of a hit in Japan. Bonk had other names he was known by, including PC Genjin in Japan or PC Kid or BC Kid in the PAL regions. Bonk was the featured character in the United States when it came to the TurboGrafx advertising. His origin is as normal as it gets. Originally a comic book character for a magazine called Japan PC Engine Monthly, Bonk proved to be popular with readers. As a result, Hudson, one of the makers of the TurboGrafx, decided to make a game around him. Personality was developed, and Bonk became a marketing hero. As you can see, Bonk was basically a big old walking baby, designed as a caveman, cave dude per the advertisements, and was best known for his very large head. That was honestly his whole shtick, save for 1992 when Bonk evolved into Air Zonk, a cyborg descendant of Bonk. Kind of fun to say, Air Zonk. In addition to appearing in advertisements for the platform, Bonk appeared in multiple games, leading off with Bonk's Adventure, and then also appearing in numerous sequels, including Bonk's Revenge and Bonk 3, Bonk's Big Adventure. Unfortunately for Bonk, his time on the TurboGrafx 16 was not meant to last. The entire platform died in '94 when it failed to make inroads against Nintendo and Sega. However, Bonk himself didn't completely disappear. Bonk would appear in multiple other games for the Super Nintendo and Game Boy, including Super Bonk and Game Boy Genjin Land. So when you think of Xbox, you probably think of Master Chief as the mascot. However, it wasn't always that way. Meet Blinks the Time Sweeper, who was originally positioned to be one of the mascots of the system. Blinks is a cat who has a vacuum that can alter the flow of time. In his first game, Blinks the Time Sweeper, Blinks must save the world and rescue the girl. You know, standard stuff. The game was released in 2002 as one of the earlier games for the then new Xbox, but development began in 1999 with developer Artoon, a company founded by numerous Sega employees, including Naoto Oshima, who had helped design Sonic. The premise of the game was promising, and the company liked the idea of creating a mascot-like character who could manipulate time, something that designers claimed was only possible on the Xbox due to its impressive processing power. When it came to mascots, Blinks fit in well with what people seemed to be looking for at the time: furry animals. Artoon, with its long experience in creating games for the Japanese market and experience with fuzzy animals, thought that Blinks would be able to represent the Xbox well outside of the United States. Blinks stirred up a lot of excitement among Microsoft higher-ups during its development, and the company felt that the game was well positioned for success. They felt the same about Blinks himself, who was featured heavily in Xbox advertisements in order to position it as a mascot for the system in Japan. It seemed to fit with the culture and what worked for other consoles. Internally, Xbox spoke about doing the same thing for Blinks with the United States, but officials in the US never put too much emphasis on Blinks. As such, the mascot talk was always more confined to Japan. The first game, Blinks the Time Sweeper, released to mixed reviews. It would sell over 600,000 copies, however, moving enough to earn a sequel, Blinks 2, Masters of Time and Space. That game also earned mixed reviews. It also was a little strange. Despite Xbox's heavy emphasis on Blinks himself, the cat barely appears in the game. This probably speaks to the so-called popularity of the mascot more than anything else. Xbox had clearly moved on from their desire to use the character as a mascot. 2004 was the last time that Blinks had his own game, and the company shifted largely to the brooding and deadly Master Chief of Halo. Of course, there hasn't been a new Halo game since Halo Infinite in 2021, and if that doesn't speak to the struggles that Xbox faces, I'm not sure what does. Speaking of animals, let's look at this little guy. Meet Gex the Gecko, the mascot for the failed 3DO. I say this filled with some pain. The 3DO was actually a pretty cool console, but one that was just ahead of its time. It didn't have the appropriate technology or price point to support what it was trying to do. Released as an advanced 5th generation console, meaning it was meant to compete with the PlayStation, N64, and Sega Saturn, the 3DO boasted some genuinely impressive hardware and graphics. Leading the charge from a game perspective was Gex. Gex, which was developed by Crystal Dynamics and released in 1995, is a side-scrolling platformer. Gex is a TV-obsessed gecko who must travel through the media dimension, which consists of 24 levels across 5 different TV channels. Gex the game was very well received, as was the character, who was meant to be on par with Sonic or Mario. The game would sell more than 1 million copies, making it the best-selling game on the 3DO. Gex himself was voiced by comedian Dana Gould. The character was a wisecracking gecko from Hawaii who loves watching TV, hanging out with his friends, and throwing parties. The original pack-in game for the 3DO was Crash and Burn, but later games would substitute in Gex, meaning that the system really was leaning on Gex's impressive gameplay and personality to sell copies. Gex had all the features that you would expect from a mascot in the 1990s. A smart aleck talking animal. He even had a catchphrase, "It's tail time," a reference to his preferred method of attack. As part of his unofficial mascot role, Gex would appear in numerous advertisements for the 3DO and in many pieces of 3DO media, such as the 3DO magazine. Sadly for fans of the 3DO, the console was not built to last. Its expensive price and small game library meant that it could never really compete with other larger platforms, and the console was discontinued in 1996 after selling no more than 2 million copies. However, Gex was such a good game that even the failure of its origin system didn't stop it. Gex was ported to other competitors, including the PlayStation, Sega Saturn, and even Windows. It would earn 2 sequels, one in '98 and one in '99, before its 4th sequel was later canceled. Sadly, that was it for Gex. He has not been seen since, save for limited cameos and as a bot in Astro Bot. Next, Bubsy. Anyone remember this guy? Bubsy was the product of Accolade, one of the more storied game studios of the 80s and 90s. And while Bubsy and Accolade are now both gone, they both had the opportunity to leave a decent impression. The history of Accolade is actually really fascinating. The company was one of many founded by Atari programmers who fled the company due to poor treatment, low pay, and inadequate recognition. Alan Miller and Bob Whitehead founded Accolade in 1984 after leaving Activision, which was the first third-party studio. Accolade made their mark with a series of sports titles, including Hardball, Test Drive, and Jack Nicklaus Golf. These games are largely what the company was known for, which makes the development of Bubsy all the more fascinating. The first Bubsy game was Bubsy in Claws Encounters of the First Kind. The game was a platformer in which you control Bubsy, who must stop the alien woolies from stealing Earth's yarn balls, of which Bubsy has the world's largest collection. You battle woolies and collect yarn balls. Points for randomness, I guess. It was also worth noting that aggressive marketing leaned heavily on the character of Bubsy, who was, you guessed it, designed to compete with Mario and Sonic. This included a Bubsy mascot walking around the 1993 Winter Consumer Electronics Show. In fact, according to designer John Skeel, the design of the game was meant to be, quote, as fast as Sonic and as deep as Mario, end quote. The game was a hit, with critics praising its non-linear levels, and sold well enough to create additional games. Bubsy himself was designed to be wacky and zany, complete with funny death animations and catchphrases like, "What could possibly go wrong?" thus giving him an advantage on Mario and Sonic. And look at the exclamation mark. How could you possibly not like a character with an exclamation mark as a shirt? 3 more Bubsy games were produced in the 90s. Bubsy 2, Bubsy in Fractured Furry Tales, and Bubsy 3D. Helping the success of Bubsy was the fact that the game was published on multiple platforms, including the Super Nintendo, Genesis, Atari Jaguar, PlayStation, and more. Bubsy was such a hit and so ubiquitous that a pilot cartoon was filmed, sponsored by Taco Bell. Entitled What Could Possibly Go Wrong, the cartoon featured additional plot elements and new characters. Sadly, it was never picked up as a full series. Active Bubsy development was temporarily halted when Accolade was sold to Infogrames, a French gaming company that would eventually become the Atari Group. However, 2 more games came out in the 2010s. 2017's Bubsy, The Woolies Strike Back, and 2019's Bubsy Paws on Fire. In an October 2023 interview, Atari CEO Wade Rosen, who had acquired the license to Bubsy, said that the company was open to pitches for a new game. So perhaps there is another Bubsy in our future, besides the upcoming release of Bubsy A Perfect Collection, which is a compilation of the already existing 6 games. From Bubsy to Bubs, let's talk about Bub from Taito. Taito is the venerable video game developer, a leader in the video game world, producing video game cabinets as far back as 1973. They have produced some of the best-selling arcade games of all time, including Space Invaders. They also published a slew of very popular games, including Arkanoid, Elevator Action, and Bubble Bobble. Bubble Bobble was one of Taito's biggest hits of the 80s. In the game, you play as Bub or Bob and must trap enemies in bubbles, fighting your way through 100 levels. The game was such a hit that it spawned nearly a dozen other versions. It also created 2 very popular main characters, Bub and Bob. Bub, being first, became one of the featured characters in many of Taito's other games, including Puzzle Bobble, Parasol Stars, Bubble Symphony, and many more. Indeed, this slew of other games, more than most, elevated Bub to mascot status. Bub's role in the company accelerated, even during the 1990s and 2010s when the amount of Bubble Bobble games being created slowed down. He was featured heavily in a variety of commercials and had the standard array of merchandise. Fortunately for Bub, his popularity would endure. In 2019, more than 40 years after the original game, Bubble Bobble 4 Friends was released. Here's the cool thing about Bub. He isn't completely forgotten, even as his profile has somewhat fallen off during more recent years. In addition to featuring in a slew of other games, Bub is still actively used by Taito. For example, the company uses him in Bub's Broadcast, an official channel that checks out other Taito games and music. Apparently, he also drums. So, yeah. All right, let's stop there. That's more than enough. Any mascots you wish I had covered? If so, let me know in the comments below. More importantly, there are loads of other options when it comes to connecting with this channel and watching the videos on video game history that you crave. For example, we have just launched a membership program. So if you want to support the channel and me, please click on the join button or link in the description. Becoming a member allows you access to exclusive chat, social, and shout out options. And more importantly, if you enjoyed, please do like and subscribe, and please click on the next video that the almighty YouTube algorithm has in store for you. As always, thank you so much for watching, my friends, and hope you enjoyed watching this video as much as I like making it. Take care, everybody.